a world, one man, one mission. Sorry, it just sort of sounds like that. Sorry. I'm done, I promise.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to present our next speaker, Alisan Atvur. He has been described as one of those inspiring speakers whose passion for his subject is so palpable that you can bottle it. I had the pleasure of spending a few days with Alisan touring the Old Town, and he is truly a Renaissance man. He's smart, he's a deep thinker, and he's just a truly wonderful human being. He's a lecturer at the California College of Arts and chief humanist at Propellant, a service design consultancy in San Francisco. Previously, he was a senior designer at Frog, where he led initiatives in healthcare, consumer electronics, and finance. He mentors leaders at Mozilla, is it AIGA? A-I-G-A? And the Information Architecture Institute. He holds patents in several UI conventions and is the editor of Touchpoint, a journal for service design. Put your hands together for Alisan, who will be sharing with us his thoughts on the dirty word of design, management.
Thank you. Hi, guys. How are you? So this thing starts ticking when I start talking? It's not ticking. Oh, well. My name is Alisan Atvur, and as she just explained, I am the chief humanist at a group called Propellant, and that word is weird, humanist. I'm still trying to make sense of what that actually means. I'm just thankful I get to work with awesome people with creative minds who do awesome things, while I get to spend my time essentially studying relationships. I get paid to watch people and talk with people and listen to people in all kinds of relationships. And I hope you guys get a chance to do that too. It's one of the most fulfilling things I've been able to do in my life. I love it. I have a background in psychotherapy, but I went into design, so I just love relationships. I think they're nifty. I love all kinds, the informal ones that you have with your friends, the ones that you create with strangers, the little one we have right now. You can feel the relationship. It doesn't have to be a formal one. It's just one that we're developing between a person and a lot of other people. The complex ones, the romantic ones, the awkward ones, the dating ones, the professional ones. But there's one in particular that I feel as though that I would love to study more because it's dirty. In the sense of so when I prepared this talk originally, I was describing to people and people thought, when you say dirty, people are gonna think, dirty. No, it's not. It has nothing to do with that. It's actually about reputation. It's this relationship, this management relationship that consistently comes up as bad or frustrating. It gets such a bad reputation, management. At least for me, it does. Maybe you guys have had amazing experiences with managers in large organizations. Maybe every single person you've interacted with who's considered your manager has been a complete success. And if that's the case, I totally understand if you want to walk out. Or if you've had a little bit of a problem anywhere, then maybe this may be relevant. Because I feel like there's really three big things that make management feel, it's easy to fail as a manager. It makes it feel bad because it has so many things to do with your chemistry, your personality, how you interact with people, the expectations and very clarity that Tim was just mentioning. It's easy to blame a manager. The reason this project didn't go well, my manager just never gave me time, or like, oh, management, you know, they just weren't cooperating. Or it's deeply connected to personality. It's a reality that who I am as a person affects how I manage. I can't change that. I just have to be aware of it. I'm thankful that I've been lucky enough to manage for about 8 or 9 years outside of my career, and I've probably failed at one of these at some point. Probably all of you have too. Who here is a manager in some form or fashion? Okay, we have a few. Who here has a manager in some form or fashion? So pretty much everyone has at least some idea of this relationship. Now, if you felt any one of these things, then this presentation is going to be relevant. Otherwise, it's going to be boring aside from some of the funnier jokes. And those aren't probably even going to be that funny. So, you may be wondering, why is he possibly coming to a design conference to talk about management? I honestly didn't think it was going to be picked up. Because when I proposed this concept, I really wanted to talk about that human relationship between the manager and the designer. I thought it was so fascinating, and I'm thankful that I get to talk to you guys about it. I think it's just awesome. But it still makes no sense. Like she was saying, I teach design strategy and design research in California, where I teach business individuals how to learn about design and design individuals how to learn about business. And I get to work in an awesome city with beautiful lights, and I'm so thankful for so many great experiences that I've had with awesome companies and awesome teammates. It's just, that's not what fascinates me right now. It's this management relationship between a person and another person. And here's why. I genuinely do not believe that anything we design in this world can be any stronger than an organization's weakest relationship. You can pick up any product, you can look at any service, and if you find a place where it's misaligned or it's not working, there is a relationship within that organization that is to blame. And I use that word carefully, blame. But it's the cause, and I'll prove it. We're about improved human experiences at this conference, right? I love improving human experiences. Some of my favorite people in the world are humans. We want to do it. We just happen to think, perhaps, design can be a mechanism of doing that when we build an organization that allows us to focus on those principles of design. And actually, it's not on this word, on serving humanity. Then we'll naturally start to improve the human experience. And what I'm hearing a lot now these days is, oh, we have to have a good culture in order to get a design focus in our organization so that we can improve human experiences. And that's true. Culture is amazing. It's what affects how we do what we do. It's true. The dilemma is, at least for me, is I don't think culture exists. And the reason why is culture is the sum of habits. If you're an anthropologist, you might call the sum of habits rituals. But in my case, what I'm saying is, as workers, as creatives, we have habits. We have personal behaviors that we do over and over again. The way we lead is based on habits. And all of this, and here's where it gets funny, comes from manager behaviors. Because managers introduce and reinforce what is an acceptable behavior in an organization. That's why if it's a lower manager or an upper manager, this affects habits, which affects culture, which affects your design focus, and invariably improved human experiences. Not really glamorous, but a reality. And I know this because I spent 4 months talking with all kinds of organizations, ranging from 320,000 person-sized companies to 4-person startups. And they were really kind to be honest with me about the difficulties of management. And when it comes to a place like this, whether it's a small design studio or just a large organization that wants to integrate design, we can read the books on management. I encourage you to do it. I feel like there's so many that I still haven't read, but I don't think the books hold the answer, because the books only give us a certain amount of knowledge without necessarily showing us how to apply it sometimes. It's the same way that we can learn about design, but it's only in that act of creativity that we start to understand what that actually means. I don't know if anyone's read this article. Does anyone recognize this? Because if you do, you'd be laughing right now. It's a very interestingly written article that got 750 critiques, comments, about the 7 rules for managing creative but difficult people. And largely those critiques were around how management was being described as, this is how you handle creative people. You don't pay them well because they're not inspired by money, they're inspired by other things. And I'm not attacking this article or this author. I'm suggesting that he was suggesting that there are tried and true rules for managing you or managing you. And I'm not sure I believe that, because I think you are a person. And right now, you and I have a relationship. It's informal. It's only been a few minutes. But you and I have a different relationship. And you're both creative people, and you both have different needs. I don't really think I can use rules. I think I can use relationships. So I've been wondering, what is a good management relationship? And just like I said, I don't think it's just one. I think it's unique to each and every relationship. I'm not going to go into the existentialist psychology of why that's the case. And for people who were in my workshop yesterday, you know I like to nerd out on existentialist psychology. But I assure you, this is a question people have had for many, many years. I really think there are only 3 principles, not rules, just some principles. I think great managers are the ones who can empower people to be self-reliant so that they can feel like they can actually accomplish what they need to get done and what they want to get done, not just in their work, but in their lives. I think managers who are great are the ones who can adapt to the changing needs and demands, not only of the person as he changes, but of the organization. You're not going to be the same practitioner or the same coder or the same designer 6 months from now that you were now. And if I'm managing you, it's my responsibility to be sensitive to that. And then finally, and this is where I think it's the most important, if designers are responsible for designing the user's experience, then managers are responsible for co-designing the employee's experience. In that sense, we are creating an experience for a person who's choosing to use creativity professionally, which is great. We get to get paid to use our minds to solve problems. But that's an experience itself. And the best managers are the ones who can help make that experience amazing. When I was young, I practiced and I taught martial arts for about 8 years. And there was a passage that I had to commit to memory because we were encouraging people to understand what it meant for me to be teaching martial arts to individuals. And I won't go through the entire passage, even though it's awesome, and you should definitely pick up the Tao Te Ching if you haven't read it before. But the last part of it is, when a leader's work is done and his aim is fulfilled, they will say, "We did it ourselves." I'll say it again. When a leader's work is done and his aim is fulfilled, they will say, "We did it ourselves." That doesn't mean that the leader didn't help. It doesn't mean that the leader wasn't working very hard. It means that at the end, you feel as though you had the power to do what you wanted and what you needed to do. And that is to honor the person you're managing. So how do we create these relationships, especially in creative environments? Everyone's different. If you're working at a big organization, has politics, has issues, you may not even be managed by someone who understands who you are. That's kind of a reality. I can't change that reality. And sometimes it may be a small environment, but the reality is sometimes you're your own manager. Like one of the people that I talked to, if you're a private consultant, you're the one who's trying to figure out how to move forward. You have a relationship with yourself. I don't know if you knew that, but you do. Sometimes I talked with individuals who'd been leading at gigantic companies for 40 plus years. And sometimes I just interviewed college students who just got out of school and started an internship at a giant corporation. You know, there's a lot of those in San Francisco. So I was able to get a lot of interesting feedback. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to talk with them, of course, about what made their relationships amazing and what sucked. What was awful that they would never want to do again and would actually make them want to leave. And then we started playing with ways of solving those problems, and that was the fun part. Because after I got to work with all of these individuals and talk with them and listen to their stories about their best experiences and their worst ones, it was an honor because it's like listening to someone tell you about the way they love their wife or the way they love their son. Because the good ones are like, here's how my manager helped me do something in my life that I really wanted to do. And I had this great project and I felt I learned so much. And the bad ones are like listening to bad breakup stories. You're like, oh my gosh. Oh, I can't believe she didn't do that. It was the worst year and a half of my life, or whatever it may be. They're just relationships. We can't deny that. So the thing that I heard as themes, and this was interesting, whether it was a big organization or a small organization, certain things kept on coming up. Like managers saying, well, we don't often have a lot of time to work with people because we're very busy with our work and other matters, that management's kind of like a secondary thing. And much to Tim's point, it kind of helps to be able to have fewer people you have to manage. But even still, in those moments, you just may not have enough time. Or sometimes they don't have an interest. They're director of blank blah blank, and the act of management is completely secondary on their list. It's less of an interest. Sometimes there's misaligned goals where there's the understanding that the person you're managing wants one thing, but that's not the case. And you just have never been able to align with the goals. There's poor chemistry. That's a reality. Like right now, if you're sitting in the audience and you're like, this talk sucks, this guy sucks, that's just us having poor chemistry because we have a relationship. And A lack of management experience and skills. That's something we're seeing a lot more. Because our industry is so new and because we're building out so many teams in so many different ways, there are a lot of individuals who may have never been in this situation who are solving problems that have never even been solved. So you're adding complexity onto complexity. That's working against our favor for having great management relationships. And you remember, like I said, I think that relationship is what affects our ability to design. So I started to ask myself, all right, let's make the worst case scenario, like absolute worst one. So like imagine you only have 5 minutes with your manager. That's all you have. You can't spend any more time with your manager because the person is so swamped with work, and you and your manager, you don't get along. You don't like each other. You think each other is stupid. You're probably maybe even trying to steal their job. Your manager has no experience. This is the first time, maybe they don't even know how to speak your language, which I discovered in a few situations where there was a huge language gap. And your manager doesn't understand design. Ooh. Yeah, you guys know, you've been there. When you've had an interaction with someone who's responsible for defining your profession, but they don't understand the values by which you practice. And even worse, you're not going to see that manager again for a while. Let's say 3 months. This is a scenario that actually exists at several of the companies that I talk to. And it's a reality, and I wish I could say right now, hey, go redesign your organization to change that, but I can't. I mean, I can, but I can't help to make that change. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to help to make that change. And I think the way we could do it is the way we do it when we're designing with our clients, with visualizations, with exercises, ways of starting conversations to be more honest with ourselves about what we're trying to accomplish. It's just instead of having a conversation about what we're trying to do for a user, we're trying to have a conversation about what we could do in our relationship. I know it sounds weird, but we're actually quite natural at it. So I built 12 little exercises that I wanted to be able to do in 5 minutes with a person you don't like in an environment that is very awkward, where the language that you don't have, so that you felt as though, or anyone, that you could have the honest conversation about your relationship to make things move forward. I don't buy that organizational politics stands in our way. Organizational politics is an excuse. It is an individual choice to make an effort to at least maintain the relationship in the context of that organization's politics. I see there's only 3 major stages of any relationship. But for this case, there's only 3 major stages for management. There's that moment where you establish a relationship, which starts from hiring, as well as expectation setting, as well as just getting to know the person, feeling comfortable. And then there's a stage where you're maintaining that relationship over time, over years, hopefully. And then there's a point where it evolves. It evolves maybe because you leave, or it evolves because maybe you get promoted and you have a new manager, or it evolves potentially because you've been fired. And that was one of the most difficult things I've had to do, and that was a relationship. Let's start with the first one, because what I'd love to do is, I have these tools online, and they're all designed to be able to be put on a napkin. So if you have your manager in the audience and you feel like you want to have a conversation with him or her, feel free to grab a napkin tonight and try these out. And tell me where they don't work. Tell me where you can make them better. The goal is for us to feel like our relationships are just getting stronger. So let's talk about one for establishing it. This is the less controversial one. There's some very interesting ones. And this one's called Profession Mapper. We do flowcharts all the time. It's our thing. Boxes and arrows. So applying it to our lives and our relationships is a way to be a little bit more clear about our intentions. If I'm managing you, I know that this remote will work. Hi. So guys, how about this? Can you progress as I say, next slide? Profession Mapper. While we're setting this up, okay. Everyone has a next career goal. We can't lie about that. You have one, you all have one, and it's a reality. It's not a bad thing. It's only bad when you're intentionally deceiving someone in order to acquire it, and that's actually what causes organizational politics. That's the reason. By having a manager, you're able to have an environment where you can look at that career goal and let the wisdom of the manager, hopefully, Identify what are the steps of growing to that next place. If you wanted to become a creative director, what are the skills you want to develop? What are the projects that you feel you need to move forward with? What are the steps that you need to take? I've done this for a period of time, let me help you. Or someone who's done it for 40 years would help someone who's done it for 20. It's a conversation about growth. And it doesn't stop there. We can't just say, well, improve your skills in X, become more empathic. Well, what does that mean? Give me at least a next step. Tell me what I could do tomorrow to get me on that path. And it is an act of honoring the person you're managing by allowing your experience to be shared. Now, what this looks like when you break it down is a little bit like this. I tried this in Copenhagen recently, and I wanted to do it with a complete stranger. He was looking for someone who's just had some thoughts on things, and he was in a position where I did feel like I could help him a little bit. So we did it on a napkin in 4 minutes, and it worked so well, he actually turned it into a visual, and he's sharing it now, and he's making plans about his career. He essentially architected a strategy for his own growth without me. I have no interest or no intention, but this will, in his mind, allow him to grow in a very specific way. Now, you could do this in all kinds of ways, but the goal is to be able to walk away from a 4-minute conversation and go, yeah, we know each other well enough to know what we're trying to do, and we're honest. And if you can't feel that honesty at the end, just like in any other relationship, it's doomed. Maintenance. Maintenance is a hard one. When projects get tough, when situations get rough, organizational politics start to creep in. Ugh. And what I found is one of the most painful parts is responding to a project where a manager may come in, or a creative director, and identify that they want to give a critique, a little bit of information, a little bit of advice. They give it and they leave. There's a specific name for that. And this activity is called dwell and gel because the activity that I'm talking about is called swoop and poop. And you realize how uncomfortable it makes me feel to say poop in front of an audience. But it's necessary because swoop and poop is an act of coming into a design studio or an environment. Let's say I'm a manager and I just walk in and I'm looking at some potential interaction flows. All right, I'm taking a look at some research and I'm like, all right, that's good, all right, this all sucks, bye. And that happens. Has that happened to anybody? Where it's just like a short period of time, someone comes in, critiques, doesn't give any explanation, it's only a few bits, and then they just walk away. It happens quite frequently in many studio cultures, and sometimes it's a personality issue, but we have to stop this swoop and poop attitude. This seagull management it must stop with us. We can be very fast at critiques and extremely good at giving feedback. We just can't start the critique without the cross. That's my new motto. Don't start a critique without the cross. What's the cross, you say? I'd be happy to tell you. It's this. You take a whiteboard, or in my case, a napkin, and you write down at the beginning of the conversation you're having with the individual, all right, dwell time. How much time can I be here to actually talk with you? I've got 5 minutes? Okay, 5 minutes. Okay, I've got 10? Great, 10. We've set that up. All right, what's the user's goal around the design you're showing me, or the code you're showing me, or the content you're showing me? What? You can't articulate it? Okay, we can't have the critique. Okay. Now, what are the emotions that you understand this individual is feeling at this point? Can you articulate it? Okay, good. We put it down, and then the logic behind the design that you're showing me. This doesn't have to be long. The reason it works on a napkin is it forces you to be concise. Just to Tim's point, I don't know where he is, but I'm pointing to him in spirit. It forces you to be clear. And clarity does amazing things. The critique can start at that point. Because at that point, these are the informal moments of a design brief that allow you to make a decision. Let's talk about one more technique. It's called evolve. And this one is a difficult one for me. And it's called the pain journal. I've had some very difficult projects. I'm sure you have too. I've had some very difficult moments in my life that made those projects even more difficult. Maybe that was the case for you too. If you were in my workshop yesterday, I definitely sensed that with a number of people. That's a reality. And it has broken me twice in my life. It has put me in a position that I felt awful. I felt like my creativity, my work, my ability to do anything was being compromised. Sometimes people call it burnout, others call it exhaustion, some people just call it not really enjoying who you're working with or not enjoying your projects. Regardless of what it is, the thing that I've come to realize recently is that project pains happen. We can't ignore it. Like, even if you had the best management relationship in the world, at the best organization in the world, with the most exciting projects, it's going to hurt. And that is why we're getting paid, because we're doing things that are extremely complicated that people can't do on their own. But that doesn't mean it's any less complicated for us. So rather than taking these project pains and internalizing them, like I did, like a fool, I'm thankful that a manager years ago showed me this. This is a Star Wars journal. It's the only Star Wars reference I'm going to make this entire talk, I promise. But inside of it, every single page are 3 sentences. At the end of every project, I write down my pain, and I have to force it into 1 sentence. And then I write, why did this pain happen? And then I finally write, what have I learned from it? Every single one of these pages is the equivalent, in my opinion, to anything I could potentially teach in any class. This is more appropriate for me to grow than any conference, any moment, any relationship, actually, because this is my relationship with myself. And it was just a manager who happens to be able to open this up and take a look at it with me and say, okay, I'm going to show you how you're going to overcome that pain next time. Whether it's, we never had enough time to code, and that was so frustrating because I felt like we were working until the middle of the night. And if you don't know what you're learning from it, that's where the manager comes in and provides clarity or insight or idea. And that's where trust comes in and growth comes in. Now, you could think of it more complexly, but in my opinion, there's just these 3 big stages when it comes to how we work with our peers or how we work with our wives. Work with our wives, that sounds terrible. How we live with the people we care about. Because these are people. I want to close, if that's okay. I'm going to stop talking. With this. We end our careers at some point. And hopefully at the end of that career, you're happy, you're honored, you're excited. Hopefully it's at a point in your life that you want to end it. I hope it is. But we only end it with 2 things and nothing else. First, we end it with a portfolio. Whatever that may be, whether you're an engineer, a designer, whether you are a coder, a builder, the stuff that you've made, the stuff that you've done has artifacts, has stuff. We use the portfolio as a means of saying, like, this was my life before you met me. Look at this. And that's fine. It's a mechanism for communicating. And it's important for designers, I would imagine, I think it is to some of us, to make sure that that portfolio is filled with great work, inspiring work, exciting work. And that's good, because that's how you're helping to change behavior in humanity. But there's one other thing that we finish our careers with, and that's a list of people that we've influenced positively, as well as negatively. Now, a manager is someone who probably has a much, much, much longer list. Designers are naturally considering, I hope naturally, considering the end user and how to improve that life or how to improve that scenario. But managers must also consider not only that, but how they're improving the lives of their colleagues and the people around them. And it's extremely hard to leave with a great portfolio or with a great set of design accomplishments without having people who are around you to nurture you. That's a reality. Even though I make it sound soft, it's a reality. Because at the end of our life, we die with the exact same 2 things. We die with the effects of how we used our creativity, and we die with the people that we've helped. If you take nothing else from this talk, I hope that you at least consider the fact that whether you want to or not, you're always influencing everyone around you with your relationships. Thank you so much for letting me talk to you guys.